Oh shoot. It was a Caribbean beating. So you pretty much get beat with everything. That's pretty like wooden pot spoons, hair brushes, belts, hands. Well, basically it was like whatever she could get her hand on. It was just, I mean, I'll give it up to her for versatility, but man, it was just.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Chat. Today we are with JP Brown. He is a national touring comedian. He's been in episodes of the Comedy Parlor, but we're gonna put that aside and really get down and dirty and talk about the beatings he received as a child from his Caribbean lineage, even though he lives in one of the nicest, polite countries in the world, Canada. So how would you describe the taste of a banana to someone who's never eaten one?
I would describe it as the taste of a banana as sweet, but not too sweet. It's just the right type of sweet. And it's not overpowering. It's not like, oh my God, I just bit into a candy store. It's like, it's almost like an organic sweet, for lack of a better term. It's one where it's like, okay, that this comes from, this it comes from the earth. You know what I mean? It's like it has one of those.
It sounds like you're describing it's the banana is like the right bed for Goldilocks.
I guess. Like
it wasn't too hard. It wasn't too soft. It's just the right one.
Yeah. It's just it's the right texture. It hits different. It's just one of those ones where, okay, this feels good. Like, I mean, I always put bananas in my protein shakes and stuff, and I'm like, yes, this is nice.
They are in a lot of shakes, aren't they?
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Well, it sounds like you're definitely into health and fitness. And those of you who are not watching, who are listening to it, I can tell you he is.
I kind of, I dabble.
So tell me, when did you have your first existential life crisis as a child?
Oof. First existential life crisis as a child. Oof. That's an interesting question. Because it's like, it makes me wonder, it's like, on one side, I'm thinking to myself, like, which one,
Let's do the first one you remember, and go from there.
It's a tough one to remember, because like it's always been kind of like a rocky relationship with my family and stuff. It wasn't, I mean, there were great times, don't get me wrong, but there were also very many toxic times.
Well, whatever you feel open to. What did you learn that had a bigger shift? Because sometimes when there is a toxicity, there is more trauma. It's when we actually spiritually wake up.
Yeah. I would, there's been just so many, you know what I mean? I mean, well, first off, obviously there was, the beatings and stuff that would happen when, as a child and stuff, and that was never fun. You know what I mean?
So, was there a moment where you questioned why you were being beaten?
Yeah, there was some times where it was just like, it was almost, now, I mean, obviously when I was that young, it was just, I didn't want that. I didn't want that to happen. You know what I mean? And yeah, so I'm like, okay, I'll be good and whatever. But then
I'm just going to check, how old are you talking about?
Talking like anywhere from I want to say from 4 to 10,
okay,
maybe, right? And it was at that point where it was just like, okay, I'm getting beaten for this. Like there was one point where I was just like, just flashbacking, and I'm just, and I remember later on in the years, eventually I did, confront her about that in a sort of a way. I did, because
so this was your mom did it. And what was the beating with? What did you get beat with?
Oh shoot, it was a Caribbean beating, so you pretty much get beat with everything. That's pretty, like pot spoons, wood, like wooden pot spoons, hair brushes, belts, hands. Well, basically it was like whatever she could get her hand on. It was just, I mean, I'll give it up to her for versatility, but man, it was just
She's creative. Or was
yeah.
it really a matter of whatever I've got nearby that won't actually pierce the skin but will do the task?
Yeah, I guess so. You know what I mean? I mean, thank goodness she didn't discover phone books to, underneath a shirt, but oh my goodness. But it was just, it was just so, it made me realize how people like that don't need children. They need therapy,
So so how old were you when you had that realization?
I would say like, maybe I was like, just looking back at it, I was probably in my 20s at the time.
Okay, so you were in your 20s,
yeah,
and that's when you realized maybe there was something else going on with the parent.
Yeah, especially because I started to see a lot of things that just didn't add up, where I was just like, okay, you guys are telling me not to do this or not to do that, but then you're doing the exact same thing that you're preaching against.
Right. Can you think of any example, no matter how small, for the audience?
Okay. Well, I remember, for example, my uncle, one of my uncles, he was, yeah. Anyway, I could say a lot of words about him, but I won't say that. But I will say that, there was so many times where he would come down on me, if I wore my shoes in the house, like really like yelling, swearing and stuff, threatening and so on. And then not even a few weeks later, I remember seeing, and this was when I was at a really young age, I remember seeing him walking around with his shoes on. I'm like, wait a second, you're walking with your shoes on right now. And he's like, well, look, they're clean. And I'm like, dude, you wore them outside. Come on. Like,
so
really?
You were how old when you saw this?
I can't remember. I have no, I was definitely youngin' though.
Under 10?
Probably, yeah.
Okay. So there's an awakening of, well, hang on. And then did you feel, and I'm talking about if you can go back, when he came up with his reason, did you feel that reason was not actually the reason? It was just a control, or just that feeling of that's complete codswallop?
Yeah, I mean, I did kind of think that for sure. I mean, when I think about it now, it's just like, it was so obvious, it was obviously such a load of nonsense. Back then didn't really think that much because, I was, oh no, I'm the young kid and they're the big tough parents or family members or whatever. And then they, and they use threats of violence or whatever to get their way because that's all, that's all they had. Right. But I didn't think of all this in detail. I just didn't want to get it.
Absolutely. So with that, did you find yourself trying to prove them wrong more, or did you simply try not to behave in manners so you wouldn't get a beating?
Back then, I tried to basically just toe the company line, just, and play ball with them, of course, because obviously it's like, okay, these are the rules. Please don't hit me. Stuff like that, But now, obviously now when I look back at it, it's like beating your children is such a slave mentality thing in my eyes. It's like, especially when, it's like, okay, if they say something that you didn't like or something, all of a sudden it's like, oh, don't talk back to me. You shouldn't be thinking for yourself. I'm going to hit you now. And it's like, please, master, don't hit me. Like that's the type of mentality that you're pushing onto your kids when you do that, in my opinion. Do
you think that it's still common in the Caribbean?
In the Caribbean and the Black community? Sure. I mean, there's a lot of awakening to it now. And there's a huge plethora of our community that's trying to unlearn and break away from these past generational problems, which is fantastic. It's great. So but there are still a lot of people who are still doing it and who still swear by it. And it's like, you got me. I remember how many, I've lost count of how many comedians on BET would always have a joke about my mama used to whoop me so bad, and blah, blah, blah. Or no, you got to beat your kids. You got to beat your kids. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have to do that. It's like,
do you feel that the message that they were trying to convey can nowadays be understood without that violence?
I hope so. Yeah, definitely. I definitely hope so. A lot of people will get it. A lot of people won't. But the fact that we're talking about it, that people are actually talking about it and becoming more aware of it, and that alone, whether somebody agrees or disagrees on the spot right away, that's irrelevant. But the fact of the matter is that people are talking about it, and now we're starting to have understandings, right? We're starting to understand these certain things. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't know that debates should not be about winning or losing. It should be about understanding, So, but it is starting to happen. It's bit by bit though. Sorry, scratching my eye here.
No, that's fine. Do you feel that there is a gap, going off of what you said, of really comprehending that by continuing this practice of beating, especially in your community, there is a lack of understanding that it's actually continuing that cycle of the slavery mentality?
Yeah. There's definitely a huge gap there. People who don't understand the ramifications it has on our people, on our future generations, right? Because in their mind, they're thinking to themselves, no, this is the only way they'll listen, and you got to discipline them and you got to make them understand. And it's like, you should be able to do that without, raising a hand to your child. There should, it's like, if you can't figure out a way to do it without, putting hands on your kids like that, then maybe you shouldn't have kids. I'm just saying, it's like, it sounds, once again, like I stated earlier, it sounds like you don't need kids, you need therapy. Okay. Because
you yourself go through therapy to deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, I do have a therapist I've been working with for quite a number of years now, which is great. It's really helped me deal with a lot of past traumas and stuff. And I'm still dealing with them. It's funny. The crazy thing is it never really ends. I mean, I hope it does, but sometimes it's like these things still keep arising. These problems still persist sometimes. And thankfully I have somebody there to talk to, because, okay, your family and friends, they can talk to you and do the best of to the best they can, but they can only do so much. And you need somebody who's, professionally be able to, to help you. Right. Even the therapists have therapists, believe me. So, he's definitely helped me with quite a lot of mental blocks that I've had, and I'm still working on them. It's still like it's a process. It's an uphill battle, but I'm still going through it.
One of the aspects of the meditation that we teach is helping stress get diminished so one can actually hear their own voice. And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, right? And so we are conditioned into our environment, but until we have the reflection of someone outside to say, that's a bit dodgy.
Yeah.
And also, in the worldview of meditation, we are all here to sort out our spirits, our souls, to upgrade and learn. And we're never done. Right? We want to get as much learnt as possible with the vessels and the bodies that we have. Absolutely. Now, do you do a practice to help you center yourself so you can rather than if you feel that old pattern beginning in the head, maybe the therapist has told you, do you have any practices of breathing or getting yourself centered?
One thing that's helped me recently was just being more aware of my surroundings, of my environment. Um, there was a couple of times, well, there was one time where I was walking down Venice Beach. I was walking down, and there was a few brief moments that I was getting into my head about certain issues that were going on at the time, and I was just really getting up there. And then I just started to focus on my breathing, got that back into play, and then I started to focus on things around me in my environment, like palm tree, volleyball nets, street vendor, street performer, stuff like that, like a bike rider. There's that old dude with the rollerblades and the guitar. That's dope. And I just started being more aware of my surroundings, and that helped bring me back into the present.
Right. Present moment awareness. Yes. And if any of you are curious about what it is Aware Meditation Inc. is doing, as the nonprofit entity, we raise money to try to bring meditation that's a self-sufficient practice, that you're not relying on another person, that's not a concentration technique. And the ebook, Vedic Meditation Stories, is a book with people's truth about how it changed their lives, and you wouldn't expect them to. And the links for that are below. We do hope that you're subscribed to the channel and know that by doing that, you're actually helping support us, maybe reach out to other people. I want to just go back a little bit. It's very fascinating what you're talking about with the process of this. Has it made you not want to have children yourself?
That's interesting. It hasn't made me not want children, but at the same time, it hasn't made me like say, oh yeah, I'm going to be the best dad ever. I'm going to go get a baby right now. I'll show them. It's definitely has made me do that. Because I don't know how I would be as a dad. I have no idea. So many people tell me like, oh, you'd be a great dad and you'd be fantastic. Like I can barely stop the spinach in my fridge from wilting. I'm going to take care of kids. Like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And also I want, so it definitely made me think like, okay, I want to make sure that I get my stuff sorted out first. I mean, like I said, it's never going to be perfect, but I'll always want to make sure that I'm constantly working on myself, right? So that I can be better for the children. And also it made me realize that, okay, that's definitely not how I want to raise my kids, right? If I was to have kids, I would basically say like, okay, I'm your dad, great, but I'm going to treat you as my equal. Meaning I'm not above you just because, oh, I'm an adult and I know more than you, because there's going to be some things that you may know that I won't know. And I would want you to teach me. I would hope that you would teach me, because I've always believed that the day you stop learning is the day you automatically start dying, right? It's like a plant. You got to keep watering it. Otherwise it's going to wither and die. And so I'm all about that. Like, you know what? Teach me new things. Teach me some new math equation. Teach me some new slang I don't know. Teach me anything. Let's learn from each other, right? So that's how I would want to be as a parent. And I also want to make sure that it's with the right person as well.
Right. And that
I always want to make sure it's the right person.
Not necessarily the idea would have to be having the child and that partner. That sometimes from a Vedic worldview, that we actually pick the parents, we pick what we want, so we will grow. And quite often, and we've had some beautiful cosmic chats with people who are, maybe in the early 30s, realizing they had a child together, but they are not the people to be together, that they can raise that child healthfully with more conscious mindedness, but each of them are to find another life partner. And thank goodness there is this openness. And do you think sometimes when you received beatings, it was because individuals were going through their own stress and it was easy to take out on you?
Yeah. That definitely made me think for sure, because there are times where my mom would come home and she was definitely feeling the stress and stuff. And then, it's like, okay. And then I'd be like, well, why are you taking this out on me? I didn't do anything. Like, what the heck? So there were those times for sure. And then, she'd obviously, and then I noticed other things that she, would be taking a lot of stress and everything from, the way my uncle was treating her, because that's obviously, he's their big brother, right? But it was like the way he was treating them, it was just like almost, like, I'd say almost borderline bullying, and treating, it's like you could see that they were scared of him, right? And I'm like, that's not a relationship I would ever want with any family ever. I don't want to be scared of my siblings. I don't want that. So it's like, no, I'm good with this. Please keep that away from me.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a question. It's more topical to the time. We've had individuals like Jay-Z talk about it, and now the incident that happened with Will Smith and Chris Rock at the Oscars talk about how they've got to a place, but still with that conditioning of where they grew up, it comes out occasionally that they didn't have the training of how to be. Jay-Z talks about with Beyonce, the relationship, how he didn't have the model of that, what that is to be that parent or that person with a loved one, even though you really love them, right? And then he stepped out. And now you have Will Smith talking about, for a while, he has been dealing with this particular issue, right? It is a time for healing. And would you say that it is time for it to come out more, as I'm using those examples than you, in the African American community or those from the Caribbean, to really discuss and be open about this brutality and not repeating this cycle?
Absolutely. It's been time for sure. I mean, it needs to come out. And a lot of people are talking about it. A lot of people are bringing it out. And I think it's fantastic. And I think that's one of the things, one of the generational traumas that we can hopefully eventually eradicate, because it's not needed anymore. It's toxic, it's brutal, and it's obsolete, right? So that, and this whole notion of, you have to be a man and stuff. And especially I would put it up, in the Black community, that's huge in the Black community, especially the Caribbean community and stuff. It's like, you're telling me that I can't cry, I have to man up after I just watched my mother die? No, you're not going to tell me I'm not going to grieve in my own way. I'll grieve in the way I want to grieve. And if I feel like crying, then you're damn right I'm going to feel like crying. I'm going to go ahead and do it.
What is that old definition of being a man?
It's the whole definition is, oh, you can't show your feelings and you have to keep them bottled up and stuff. And you got to be strong all the time and stuff. And you have to, and that type of mentality is just, it's toxic, because eventually that's just going to boil over, because you're going to have all this bottled up stuff inside of you that it's going to come out one way or another. It's going to come out. And if you didn't deal with it properly, you're going to either hurt yourself or other people. And we've seen it happen. We've seen it happen numerous times with numerous people. I've seen it happen in my own family, right? And I was just like, I never believed in it. I never believed in, you gotta keep those feelings down, because not only we're human beings. We're human beings. We're supposed to have the human experience with these feelings and emotions. They're part of the human experience. All right. And the more, you have people thinking this, be a man, and you're a wimp or something like that if you keep your feelings bottled up or whatever. And I'm hearing that from men and women. And it's just like, no, y'all, we need to get rid of these thoughts immediately, because they're detrimental to our health. Right.
It is from the wisdom point of view, and I'm talking about energies here, divine masculine, divine feminine, the yin and the yang. And I love the symbol of the yin and the yang, because it's not a straight line. It moves through, and we all have these. And the divine masculine entity's challenge is to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can happen in a female body, right, who's embodied the masculine qualities to survive. That's hard to be vulnerable, right? The divine feminine, energetically, their task is to know their worth and their value. So when people are making jokes about, oh, I'm not dating as many, I don't know, cheaters or players, or have I just upgraded my self-worth? Right? And so nowadays people are always talking a little bit about, oh, well, the masculine entity has become demasculined. It's not the way it was. No, it's simply that vulnerability is needed for any sustainable, healthy relationship.
Yes, agreed.
Right? And it can happen and be embodied by a female or a masculine. And what is the main reason? It's actually in front of other people. It's vanity, right? And social status. So what would you say if you had an opportunity to sit down with one of the people who loved to beat you and try to help them or educate them with what you've gone through, being vulnerable? What would you say if you could say it?
Oof. I definitely can't say it now. But I would probably say just like, this was not needed. It's like, if I had done something wrong, you could have just told me I'd done something wrong. I guarantee you I most likely would have learned a lot more from that than from, you like beating the snot out of me. That was not necessary. Sorry. And if anything, you did more damage than good. It does way more harm than good, right? Because now I have to unlearn and just dismantle all of that you put inside. Like, we're all a product of our environment, right? And we're all dealing with something. We all have our own stuff to deal with. I know I'm not perfect, right? But I do try my best to be the best person I can be. And I'm not knocking my whole family. Of course, like I said, we had good moments and stuff for sure. But I would say at the same time, there were a lot of bad moments that we all could have learned of. And I mean, like I said, I don't wear a white hat. I know I make mistakes. I've made mistakes. I continue to make mistakes. But there's a certain way to go about learning from these mistakes. And we can put all that physical abuse, we can get rid of all that. That's not needed anymore. It's obsolete, right? It's like, never mind about, tough love and everything. No. That's done. That's done. We're in a new time now. So we have to evolve and learn or get left behind.
So adapt or die and evolve and learn. Thank you so much, JP, for being with us on this Cosmic Chat. If you want to find out more about JP and what he does, we've got all his links in the description. If you enjoyed him, please put a comment in the box. Please like and subscribe. And if there's anyone else you want to have on the show, let me know. But with that, I want to thank you so much for making my day and being part of this Cosmic Chat.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks.
My pleasure.